The first scream wasn't from a human throat. It tore through the dead air of a rain-slicked street where no one walked. The air itself grew thick, tasting of ozone and wet decay. Then, the broadcast began. A flickering test pattern that shouldn't have been on any channel. It pulsed with a low, electrical hum that vibrated in the teeth. And in the spaces between the static, something watched. This is the story of the Hollow's broadcast, and the town it consumed from the inside out. A vintage television screen flickers to life, displaying the chilling message. Now broadcasting. Population zero. Narrator. What if you tuned into your local news channel and saw your own town completely abandoned? Your familiar street, the corner diner, even your own house, all vacant. A profound stillness has settled, where life once hummed. Then, a creeping realization takes hold. You look from the screen to your own window and see the broadcast is not a recording. It is the view outside. Right now, October 2022, John Thornton, 28, was driving the final stretch of back roads to his sister's house. The air in the car carried the crisp scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. He spoke to the camera, a wry smile touching his lips, knowing he was running late. Okay, final leg, he said. Sarah's gonna kill me. I'd promised Sarah I'd reach Cedar Creek by sundown, but that blowout in Bumpfork, Nebraska had other plans. Finally, my headlights washed over her charming, if slightly faded, colonial house in the quiet town. Sarah burst from the front door, her laughter cutting through the heavy evening air. You're a disaster, she called out, her voice tinged with relief. I was about to send a search party. You wanted a quiet weekend to finish your thesis. Welcome to Cedar Creek. Population sleepy.
A place where the air hangs thick with pine and damp earth. But tonight, the new scent threads through the chill, ozone, sharp and electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. And from the woods, a sound not of nature, the low, wet scratching against bark.
Sarah worked by the fireplace, her laptop casting a blue glow on her face while the logs crackled softly. John wandered the main street, passing Harold's Hardware and the Creek Diner, their faded signs swinging gently in the breeze. Cedar Creek felt friendly yet forgotten, a place where autumn never seemed to end and time moved differently. For Sarah and John, it was the perfect retreat from city noise, until they noticed what that silence truly meant. The only sound was the whisper of pines and autumn's slow creep through the woods. Inside their rental cabin sat an oddity, a massive, wood-paneled television that felt out of time. It only received one channel, Cedar Creek Community Broadcast on Channel 9. The air in the room carried the faint, metallic scent of ozone from the aging electronics. John flicked the switch, and the old television shuddered to life with a soft, dusty thump. The screen glowed with the cheerful, washed-out colors of a decades-old public service announcement. A tinny, overly bright voice crackled from the speaker, its forced cheerfulness hanging in the stale air. So don't forget, it chirped, the words feeling like a misplaced relic. The fun starts this Saturday. Come on down. Sarah's smirk faded as the weight of the situation settled in. Later that night, a low moan of wind slipped through the window cracks, carrying the faint scent of damp earth. The temperature in the room dropped sharply, the cold seeping into the sheets. A faint scratching sound began at the bedroom door, slow and deliberate. John, restless on the couch, flicked the TV back on. Channel 9 flickered to life again, but now it was broadcasting a nighttime scene. The announcer's smile was a rigid mask, his eyes fixed and unblinking. His voice was flat and hollow as he repeated, and a reminder that the fun starts this Saturday. Come on down, John muttered to himself in bitter disappointment. Okay, reruns. Great. A sudden, inexplicable urge pulled him from the couch toward the window. He peered out into the street, where an unnatural stillness had settled over the neighborhood. His gaze lingered on the oppressive darkness outside, before snapping back to the television's hypnotic glow. The broadcast now displayed a live feed of Main Street, deserted and bathed in the sickly green glow of a streetlight. John's eyes returned to the window, his breath catching in his throat. Through the glass, the exact same desolate view stretched before him. The air grew thick with the metallic scent of ozone, as reality itself seemed to fracture. The same flickering sign illuminated the same empty street outside. John whispered, "Weird. Must be a live feed camera," his voice barely audible. He settled back into the worn couch, the damp fabric clinging to his skin. On screen, the camera slowly panned down the deserted street and froze directly on their rental cabin. The camera jerks toward the living room window, revealing a faint figure on the couch. John freezes mid-motion, his body locking as he slowly turns his head toward the window. He stares directly out into the darkness where our camera would be. Only an oppressive black void stares back, swallowing all light and sound. His eyes snapped back to the television. The reflection of him in the window remained frozen on the screen. Then, the image on the TV slowly turned its head. It looked straight at the real John, its gaze locking onto his. A grin stretched across its face, far too wide, splitting the features. John recoiled violently, a strangled sound catching in his throat as he stumbled backward, his elbow catching and toppling a lamp with a crash. The television dissolved into a sea of static, the image consumed by a chaotic white noise. The next day, a desperate denial set in, a trick of the light, a cruel broadcast prank, anything but the truth. But the foundation of that denial was already crumbling. Fissures of doubt spreading through the mind like cracks in glass. The air in the room felt thick, carrying the faint, metallic scent of ozone left behind by the dead screen. Sarah's cell showed no bars, no signal, just a hollow, empty icon. The landline, when she lifted it, only played the same cheerful Harvest Festival PSA on an endless, tinny loop. Outside, the townsfolk moved with stiff, rehearsed politeness, their conversations repeating the same pleasantries like a scratched record. The air carried the scent of decaying leaves and something metallic, like old pennies, as Sarah realized every smile was a perfect, identical copy. Sarah sat at the diner counter, the chipped formica cooled beneath her fingers. Mary, the waitress with kind eyes and a lifetime of stories in her wrinkles, poured coffee into a thick ceramic mug. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" She said, her voice a soft rasp. "The Harvest Festival is this Saturday. You should come on down." Sarah began to ask about the television, but Mary's voice cut across hers with jarring brightness. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Mary chirped, her tone unnervingly cheerful. "The Harvest Festival is this Saturday." Sarah noticed the air had grown thick, carrying the faint scent of ozone and decay. Mary's smile remained frozen, a perfect mask that didn't reach her vacant eyes. For the third time, she repeats the line before turning away, and Sarah's face contorts with dawning horror. Back at the cabin, John has discovered an old cable box. The time display on Channel 9 remains frozen, unchanging. The date remained frozen, October 28th, 1992. This isn't a broadcast, Sarah. It's a recording, a memory of the town, preserved in static and shadow, and we're trapped inside it. The television flickered to life on its own, the screen glowing with an unnatural light. It displayed a grainy, silent image of their cabin's exterior from the exact angle they'd first seen it. On screen, their own ghostly figures emerged, got into their car, and began driving down Main Street. Every movement perfectly recreated the first day of their arrival. A silent, spectral replay of a memory now haunting them. The footage rewound and played again. A flawless, 24-hour loop of their own arrival. Sarah's voice trembled, thick with a mounting dread, as she asked what happens when the cycle completes. That night, the broadcast on Channel 9 had progressed, the loop inexorably reaching its final, unseen hour. A metallic scent, like cold iron, seeped from the speakers, and the very air in the room grew dense and still. The television screen flickered, displaying the cabin's interior in real time. They watched themselves on the couch, their own terror mirrored back at them in an endless loop. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and cold dread. The broadcast was finally syncing with the present moment, closing the loop of their terror. The town beyond had hollowed out completely. No more looping neighbors, just dark windows and the unblinking eye of Channel 9. A metallic scent of ozone and wet earth seeped through the walls, the only movement the slow drip of water from the eaves. Then, a noise from the roof, not the patter of rain, but something heavier, something dragging across the shingles. A scraping sound from the backyard jolted John awake. He snatched the fireplace poker, its weight cold and reassuring in his trembling hand. They crept to the back door, the floorboards groaning under their cautious weight. The scent of damp earth, and something metallic, like ozone, seeped through the crack. Peering through the glass, the moonlight revealed a tableau of perfect stillness. The entire backyard was occupied. Harold from the hardware store stood at the front of the silent crowd, his familiar face now a mask of vacant intensity. Outside, dozens of figures stood motionless in the rain, all facing the cabin. Their faces were smooth and expectant, like actors waiting for a cue. The air inside grew thick with the scent of damp wool and ozone as the television flickered to life. From the speakers, a TV announcer's voice cut through the silence, loud and unnervingly clear. And now, for our final bulletin of the evening. John and Sarah spun around, their movements sharp with panic. On the screen, their own images had vanished. In their place stood the townspeople, a silent congregation staring from their backyard. The feed cut back and forth. The broadcast and the live view were identical, a seamless loop of impossible reality. A tinny voice crackled from the speakers. "It is with great regret that Cedar Creek signs off. The fun is over." On the screen, the townspeople in the backyard move in perfect unison, taking one deliberate step forward. Outside, the real townspeople mirror the motion. A single, synchronized step crushes the carpet of dry autumn leaves. The screen flickers. Another silent command. Another crushing step forward from the legion outside. They stood at the tree line. Then, at the edge of the porch, the television screen dissolved into a violent test pattern. A shrieking, static blast tore through the room, so piercing John and Sarah clamped their hands over their ears, their faces contorted. Then, utter silence fell, thick and sudden. The screen went dead black. John and Sarah stared at each other, chests heaving, before their gaze shifted to the back door. It stood ajar, revealing only the empty backyard and a vortex of dead leaves. Sarah choked out a sob of relief. "They're gone," the signal stopped. John bolted toward the television, his movements sharp with urgency. He twisted the dial, but it spun uselessly in his hand, offering no resistance and no result. The mechanism was dead, completely inert, as if it had never been connected to anything at all. He tried the lights next, flicking the switch repeatedly, but only the hollow click echoed back at him in the suffocating darkness. The air grew heavy with the scent of ozone and old dust, and a profound, unsettling stillness settled over everything. The lights flickered back on, casting a sterile glow over the room. A broken, shaky laugh escaped his lips, the sound brittle and hollow in the sudden quiet. "It's over," John whispered, the words tasting of dust and finality. The air hung heavy with the lingering metallic scent of ozone, a ghost of the violence that had just passed. John turned to Sarah, who stood frozen, her gaze fixed beyond him on the dark television screen. In its glassy surface, the room behind him was mirrored, a perfect, silent replica. A metallic scent, like cold iron, pricked at his senses as he studied the image. His breath hitched. The townspeople were not outside. They were inside the cabin, crowded silently in the living room, standing behind the real John and Sarah, their hands hovering just behind their shoulders. John's smile vanished, his body rigid, not daring to turn. On the TV screen's reflection, the waitress Mary was visible, her lips beside Sarah's ear, whispering. Sarah's real eyes widened with a terror beyond screaming, the air suddenly thick with the scent of ozone and old rot. A primal dread took hold as the screen cut to a new, clean shot. The Channel 9 studio glows with an eerie, artificial warmth. The announcer's smile is a perfect, practiced mask. A faint, metallic scent of ozone hangs in the recycled air. She welcomes us back, her voice a saccharine thread in the quiet, before cheerfully turning to our newest residents, John and Sarah. The feed cuts to Cedar Creek's main street under an autumn afternoon sky. A crisp breeze carries the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. John and Sarah walk arm in arm, their footsteps echoing in the unnatural quiet. The town holds its breath beneath the falling leaves. The couple appeared serene, content, their pleasant smiles unnervingly fixed as they halted before the diner's entrance. A faint, metallic scent of ozone hung in the still air. From the television inside, Sarah's voice pierced the quiet, unnaturally bright and tinny. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" she chirped, the cheerful words landing with a profound, unsettling weight. John's voice, unnervingly even, announced from the television, "Beautiful. The Harvest Festival is this Saturday." Sarah chimed in with an identical, flat tone. "We should come on down." The air in the room grew thick, carrying a faint, sweet scent like overripe fruit. Then, in a single, fluid motion, they turned toward each other. Their smiles widened to a perfect, impossible symmetry, and they raised their hands in a slow, synchronized wave directly at the camera. Back in the present, the eerie broadcast played on a sleek flat screen in a modern apartment. A young woman scrolled through her phone, her attention barely grazing the unsettling images. The TV announcer's voice echoed through the dim room. "Tune in tomorrow for more from Cedar Creek. Remember, we're always on." Absently, she reached for the remote, the metallic click of the button cutting through the quiet apartment air. The channel shifted, and Cedar Creek dissolved into static before a reality show's garish colors flickered to life. She had never perceived the loop, the subtle, recurring patterns in the broadcast static and light. She never recognized the faces that sometimes flashed within the screen's noise, pale and distorted. The final image faded, leaving only the void black glass of her television, reflecting nothing. In her apartment window's reflection, the distant city lights glimmered. Among them, one particular street sign stood out clearly: Cedar Creek Avenue. Then, a faint whisper of TV static wove through the city's hum. The static dissolved, leaving behind an absolute, suffocating quiet.